Yes, good morning and welcome to week two of BA 540 Organizational Ethics. We've got coming up this week here as we kind of go down the list here. Past and we've got three discussion questions this week because we're really talking more about this week is about two things: governance and culture, and creating that ethics culture. So these discussion questions are all centered around that aspect of it. So the first part of this is, how do corporations ensure their employees act ethically? So we're going to dive into a little bit, and some of the PowerPoints touch on it as well as the text, about how there is some ways that organizations can ensure that their employees act ethically within the workplace, because they do have that need to be able to do that, and they have a responsibility to do that. So we're kind of looking in on how you think those things can be achieved in your first post. In your Let's go down here to, what's the other section? So there it is. So the next discussion question we've got this week, it deals with under what circumstancing is lying justified? Not intending to imply anything there, just take a look at, if you, because as with most media these days, the stretching of the truth happens pretty regularly in order to form and constrain a viewpoint. So at what point does that become stretching the truth, creating a positive picture, and or being outright lying? So, we can take that tact with it. And is there any situations that you think that circumstances could be justified in lying, or not telling the whole truth, as Garrett put here? So you want to take a look at those, kind of answer that question along those lines, and think about it. If you're in the workplace now, have you ever stretched the truth? And give us an example of how that works. And then our third question this week deals with, again, that culture aspect of this, where, again, how can you create that culture of understanding within there that this is just not acceptable? So when we talk about culture, and this is where the culture aspect of this comes into play, on this one is, should executives go to jail for their actions? Alternatively, should companies be held liable for the actions of their employees? So these are kind of that culture aspect that's underlying there. So if the executives if they're not held accountable, what happens? Okay, so should they be sent for the actions of their employees? Alternatively, should the company themselves be held liable for the actions of that employee? And again, you have to kind of take a look at that and really ask yourself, is, and I'll go back to the culture aspect of this. So if there's a culture there that promotes this type of activity, is that liable? And should they be held accountable? Conversely, if it's what I consider to be a one-off, okay, or it's a situation where it's one rogue employee, you might want to address that as well, okay, and to kind of look at these in two different scenarios. Because when we talk and we look at the aspect of culture, which appears in the text and in the PowerPoints, which is basically, the company's overall way of doing things. So you're gonna, so have they created this? You're, and what impact that may have. I would say some of us are getting pretty close. Just as a general couple of wrap up things, remember that probably your post should be closer to a page on your initial post, and you may have some, unless you're quoted, unless you're using your own personal experience, you're probably going to want to have at least one reference. Okay, and the second thing is, when you get to your your replies, they should be a good solid paragraph in length. So if they're not a good solid paragraph in length, you're probably not doing this long. You're not doing it justice. And as I moved through today, adding those discussions and grading those discussions as I go through, I graded a few yesterday, mostly discussion question 2 from week 1. But I want you to kind of take a look at those and look at expanding on what you have and pushing forward and really emphasizing and getting some good research into this and some good quality content. Because again, this is master's level work, so you need to be, what you might have had when you were in the undergrad is no longer acceptable. So we're going to have to really work on beefing up some of these. A lot of you had some great posts in week 1. Others needed some work, and you definitely will see that as I go through and make the comments. Hopefully I'll have these graded later today for you, if not by tomorrow at the latest. All right. I hope everybody has a great week.